What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Golly Potential YouTube channel in this series entitled Which Text is Next. Now, picking off from the first video rather, we're diving into Chapter 2 of the book entitled Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Dr. Susan Jeffers. Alright, without further ado, diving right into Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Can't you make it go away? Question mark. Janet's still waiting for the fear to go away. She had always planned to return to college once her children were in school. But she now noticed it's been 4 years since her youngest child entered first grade. New excuses have popped up since that time. I want to be here when the children come home from school. We really don't have the money. My husband will feel neglected. Although it is true that certain logistics would have to be worked out, that is not the reason for her hesitation. In fact, her husband is willing to help her in any way he can. He is concerned about her restlessness and often encourages her to fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming a fashion designer. Each time Janet thinks about calling the local college to set up an interview, something stops her. When I'm not so frightened, then I'll make the call. When I feel a little bit better about myself, then I'll make the call. Most likely, Janet is going to wait a very long time. The problem is that her thinking is all mixed up. The logic she uses automatically programs her for failure. She will never break the fear barrier until she is made aware of her faulty thinking. She simply does not see what is obvious to those who are out there doing it. Nor did I until I was forced to. Before my divorce from my first husband, I was rather like a child, allowing him to take over the practicalities of my life. After my divorce, I had no choice but to start doing things on my own. Small things such as fixing the vacuum cleaner all by myself brought me enormous satisfaction. The first night I invited people to my home for dinner as a single person was a monumental leap. The day I booked tickets for my first trip without a man was a day for celebration. As I began to do things on my own, I began to taste the deliciousness of an emerging self-confidence. It wasn't all comfortable. In fact, a lot of it was extremely uncomfortable. I felt like a child learning to walk and falling frequently. But with each step, I felt a little surer of my ability to handle my life. As my confidence grew, I kept waiting for the fear to go away. Yet each time I ventured out into new territory, I felt frightened and unsure of myself. Well, I told myself, just keep putting yourself out there. Eventually the fear will go away. It never did. One day a light bulb went off in my head as I suddenly realized the following truth. Truth 1. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. As long as I continue to push out into the world, as long as I continue to stretch my capabilities, as long as I continue to take new risks and making new decisions, or rather, disregard, as long as I continue to take new risks in making my dreams come true, I was going to experience fear. What a revelation. Like Janet and so many of you reading this book, I had grown up waiting for the fear to go away before I took any chances. When I am no longer afraid, then. For most of my life, I had played the win-then game, and it never worked. Once again, you are probably not jumping up and down with joy. I am aware that this revelation is not exactly one you wanted to hear. If you are like my students, you are hoping that my words of wisdom would miraculously make your fear go away. I'm sorry to say that it doesn't work that way. On the other hand, rather than think of it as a disappointment, consider it a relief that you no longer have to work so hard on getting rid of the fear. It isn't going to go away. not to worry. As you build your confidence in yourself with the exercises suggested herein, your relationship with fear will dramatically alter. Not long after discovering Truth 1, I made another important discovery that contributed enormously with my growth. Truth 2. The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. This sounds contradictory to Truth 1, yet it isn't. Fear of particular situations dissolved when I finally confronted them. The doing it comes before the fear goes away. I can illustrate this by recounting my first teaching experience when I was studying for my doctorate. I was not much older than my student, and I was teaching a subject in which I had dubious expertise: the psychology of aging. I anticipated the first class period with a tremendous sense of dread. During the 3 days prior to the class, my stomach felt like it was on a roller coaster. I had prepared 8 hours of work for a 1-hour class. I had handwritten enough material for 3 lectures. None of this took away the fear. When the first day of class finally arrived, I felt like I was being sent to the gauntlet, or to the guillotine. As I stood in front of my students, I could feel my heart pounding and my knees shaking. Somehow I got through the class period, not ecstatically, looking forward to the second one the following week. Thankfully, things were easier the next time. If not, I might have left teaching permanently. I started to become familiar with the faces in the classroom and connecting some of the names to the faces. The third class was better than the second, as I started to relax and go with the flow of the students. By our 6th session, I was actually, by our 6th session, I was actually looking forward to standing in front of my class. The interaction with my students was stimulating and challenging. One day, as I was approaching that once dreaded classroom, I realized I was no longer afraid. My fear had turned into sweet anticipation. I had to teach a number of different courses before I was comfortable walking into class without voluminous notes. But there did not come a day when all I had in hand was one page. But there did come a day when all I had in hand was a one-page outline of what I intended to cover that period. I realized how far I had come. I had felt the fear and did it anyway. As a result, I got rid of my fear of teaching. Yet, when I took my teaching into the television arena, once again I experienced fear, until my doing it often enough eliminated my fear of appearing on television. So it goes. Another part of the win-then game I used to play had to do with self-esteem. When I feel better about myself, then I'll do it. This is another mix-up in the order of reality. I kept thinking that if I could improve my self-image, then the fear would go away and I could start accomplishing things. I didn't know exactly how my self-image was going to improve. Perhaps by my growing older and wiser, or through feedback from other people, or a miracle would make me feel wonderful about myself. I actually bought myself a belt buckle that read, "I'm terrific," thinking that through osmosis I'd get the message. Maybe all those things did help a little. What really made the difference, however, was a sense of accomplishment I felt in pushing through fear and doing things on my own. Finally, this became clear. Truth 3. The only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. The doing it comes before the feeling better about yourself. When you make something happen, not only does the fear of the situation go away, but also you get a big bonus. You do a lot toward building your self-confidence. It's fairly predictable, however. that when you finally master something and gotten rid of the fear, it will feel so good that you will decide that there is something else out there you want to accomplish. And guess what? The fear begins again as you prepare to meet a new challenge. Through all the workshops and seminars I attended in my earlier stages of dealing with fear, I was relieved to learn something else that made me feel infinitely better about myself. Truth 4. Not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territory, but so is everyone else. I said to myself, you mean all those people out here, or all those people out there that I've been envying because they're not afraid to move ahead with their lives have really been afraid? Why didn't somebody tell me? I guess I never asked. I was sure I was the only person out there feeling so inadequate. It was such a relief to realize I was not alone in this. I had the rest of the world to keep me company. I remember a newspaper article I read years ago about Ed Koch, the seemingly fearless mayor of New York City. The article told how he had to learn a tap dance routine with the cast of the Broadway show They become a part of your being until you start to reverse your behavior and move toward your desired goals rather than retreating. There will be more later about why repetition is important. For now, just trust me and repeat the fear truths over and over again. Before you begin, however, I like to add one very important fear truth to the list. You might already have been asking yourself, why should I put myself through all the discomfort that comes with taking risks? Why don't I just go on living my life the way I've been living it? You might find my answer to the question surprising. It is Truth 5. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. Read it again. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. I know it's hard to take in at first. It says that no matter how secure any of us feel in the little cocoon we have built for ourselves, we live consciously or unconsciously with the fear that the day of reckoning will eventually come. The more helpless we feel, the more severe is the undercurrent of dread that comes with knowing there are situations in life over which we have no control, such as the death of a spouse or the loss of a job. We find ourselves becoming obsessive about possible catastrophes. What if, ... question mark. Fear permeates our lives. That is the irony of Fear Truth 5. People who refuse to take risks live with a feeling of dread that is far more severe than what they would feel if they took the risk necessary to make them less helpless. I'm going to read that one more time. People who refuse to take risks live with a feeling of dread that is far more severe than what they would feel if they took the risk necessary to make them less helpless. Only they don't know it. I can illustrate with the case of Janice, a middle-aged housewife who planned her life in such a way as to avoid risk taking as much as possible. She married a successful businessman who handled both their lives. Janice allowed this situation because it was more comfortable for her never to put herself on the line. But as the saying goes, life is what happens when we've made other plans. At the age of 53, her husband Dick had a stroke, which left him partially disabled. One day she was totally taken care of, and the next she was totally taken care of. One day she was totally taken care of, and the next she was totally taken care of. This transition wasn't easy. After fighting the rage of why did this happen to me, question mark, she started to accept the fact that she was now in charge of both her own and her husband's survival. Numb, she went through the motions of learning his business, handling decisions regarding his health, and waking up every morning with the understanding that it was up to her. After a while, the numbness left, the fog cleared, and she discovered a profound sense of peace she had never experienced before. She started to realize the heavy price she had paid to be taken care of. Prior to her husband's stroke, Janice's thinking had been permeated with the phrase, what if? She always worried about the future, never enjoyed her todays. She had lived with the underlying dread, oh my God, if something happened to him. She had often remarked to her friends, I hope I die before he does. I couldn't live without him. And she thought she couldn't, which is a less than satisfactory way to go through life. This all changed as she found strength she never thought she had. She now knows the answer to her question, what if? The answer is, I'll handle it. Janice had never realized she was living with terror all her life until that terror disappeared. The new fears were nothing compared to her old fears about survival. Her husband has now recovered enough for them to live a satisfying life together, he too has faced one of the greatest fears, that of becoming disabled. He got the answer to his question, what if, which was also handled with I'll handle it. They both handled it beautifully. In fact, through this experience, they learned the real meaning of love. By knowing you've gotten the picture, by now you've gotten the picture, we can't escape fear. We can only transform it into a companion that accompanies us in all our exciting adventures. It is not an anchor holding us transfixed in one spot. Some people have told me that they are never afraid, but when I question them, they reveal that they are just different on. But when I question them, they reveal that we are just differing on semantics. Yes, they feel nervous or anxious sometimes. They simply never label it fear. As far as I know, everyone feels fear as he or she moves forward through life. It is absolutely possible that there are some evolved souls in this world who never experience fear, but I have never met them. If I do, I promise I will become their avid student and report back to you with their secrets. You see, I know on some deep level there is nothing to fear. It is the surface level that needs convincing. In the meantime, I've learned to feel the fear and do it anyway. As I do, whether I feel the fear or not becomes irrelevant. My life will work in either case, as will yours. 5 truths about fear. 1. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. 2. The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. 3. The only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. 4. Not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territory, so is everyone else. 5. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. That was chapter 2. That was good. So, yeah. So, this chapter just went over the 5 fear truths. And I can relate to pretty much all of them. So, like I said, number 1, the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. That's so true. You might be doing something and you have no more fear because you've done it so many times. You feel like you're fearless until a new situation arises. A new situation occurs. And now you're in unfamiliar territory. You no longer are familiar with the terrain, with what's going to happen, the process, or whatever. It's just like, so, let's say in the military, right? You're at your base. When you first get there, you're kind of nervous, you're kind of scared because you don't know what's going on and you're feeling the fear, but you're doing it anyway. Then you get comfortable, you start knowing new people and all this and that, and then the fear goes away. But then let's just say you get moved to a new base. Now the job is the same to a certain degree, but you're still going to feel that fear, right? You can label it however you want to label it, but you're still going to feel it because things are different, right? The environment's different. The people you're working with is different. You don't know how people are, how they behave, how they do things at this space or whatnot. But you feel the fear, you do it anyway. And it keeps happening as long as you continue to progress and grow. Number 2, the only way to get rid of the fear is doing something. The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. So true. Like, so when I was in the military, I was security forces, basically law enforcement and security of protection of our resources, right? And when I first started out, I had a fear of pretty much doing traffic stops, right? Like the first one ever, I was with my supervisor and we do a traffic stop. Man, I was nervous as shit. Couldn't even get my words out. Then I had to call over the radio, the words all jumbled, and you can hear just the panic in my voice. My heart's racing. But over time, after doing it several times, And me, when I would be by myself riding around, I would know that I would hate doing them, so I would push myself to do it. I'm like, you know what? Nah. If this is what's fucking me up, this is what's frightening me, I'm finna do it, right? And I would do it, and the fear would go away. The fear went away. Number 3, the only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. Yeah, because after I would get done with these traffic stops, whatever, I feel so much better. I'm like, damn, I conquered that fear, right? Or same things with cold showers, right? Sometimes I will take cold showers in the morning, not because of the health benefits, but because starting your day, conquering that fear, conquering your mind, it sets you up for a better day. It gives you power over your mind, over your fears, first thing in the morning. Number 4, not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territories towards everyone else. Yeah, when you go to someplace new, say you go to a job interview and it's a bunch of people that's new, or okay, for me, when I went to basic training, everybody was new. Everybody there was new. When my first couple of days, or the first time going to basic training, or the only time going to basic training, everybody there was new. So we all experienced fear, and that is what helped me out, because I'm like, okay, this dude's more fucked up than I am, but we're all experiencing similar emotions. So it's not just you, it's not just me. Like, we're all going to experience it. So find inspiration in the ones who are stepping up and who are not acting as if they're afraid, because they are. So yeah, everyone's feeling it. Number 5, pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes with a feeling of helplessness. Oh, that's so true. Like, when I was growing up, when I was younger, we would go out to the clubs and stuff, right? And I would be contemplating in my head, like, should I go down to this chick? Should I approach this chick? The whole night, just contemplating back and forth, like, should I know? Should I know? Should I go? Should I? And just stuck in indecision, and it fucked me up. I felt helpless. So at the end of the night, my whole night was ruined because I didn't simply make that approach. Until eventually, I would do it. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I pushed through the fear and did it. If I get rejected or whatever, it didn't matter. I felt better because I wasn't stuck in indecision, and I was no longer helpless, right? Because I helped myself. I pushed through the fear. I did what I wanted to do without that little emotion or sensation of fear stopping me, holding me back, shackling me. So, like I said, that was chapter 2. Be on the lookout for chapter 3. Until next time, peace.